It's usually good. So tonight's our last night, and there were several requests to talk about the iconic representation of human happiness. So I'm going to do that. First, though, I want to respond to a question. Actually, Aisha gave a really good question, and so I just want to briefly respond to that, which is, on this path, where does the love come from? I think that was the takeaway piece, right?
Where does it fit in?
Huh?
Where does it fit in?
Yeah, where does it fit in? So I would say that the actual word that's used in a lot of the Buddhist world is, this would be the, God, got forgetting how to write Chinese. Use it or lose it.
Good enough.
Good enough or right? Yeah, this guy's figuring it too. Pretty sure it doesn't have that stuff, right? Tsubei in Mandarin Chinese, jihi in Japanese. This one means love. It's maitri in Sanskrit, metta in Pali. This corresponds to the love. And karuna, compassion. And these are sort of linked concepts. So when you say where does the love come from within a sort of Buddhist way of thinking of things, it's where does the maitri karuna come from, or how does it fit in? And so that got me thinking. And it seems to me that within the framework that I present to you, the procedures and the categories, it comes from 4 sources. One is, it's just natural. Human beings are born with a natural sense of love. In fact, I guess I'm getting sort of Chinese tonight, but there's a word in Chinese that means, according to Confucius, it carries this sense of the natural love that everyone's born with. It's pronounced ren, and it's the character for person and the character for tu. So it's like the natural thing for people is to love each other. That's the way we're born, according to Confucius. So then what happens? Well, what happens is that we accumulate a lot of poison and pain, and our primordial sort of instinct to love gets covered over by many physical, emotional, mental, uncomfortable experiences in the process from infancy on, the process of socialization, the process of discovering that the physical world can hurt you, that natural, spontaneous love gets covered over. So, as we work through that stored poison and pain, as it percolates up in our practice, and we essentially don't do anything about it, we just open up to it and let it dissipate, don't reinforce it. So that stored poison and pain gets worked through. And to the extent that the suffering, the seeds of suffering are being extirpated from us, to that extent, that primordial love just gets uncovered again. It's always been there. So that's one source of it. Another source, actually related but a little different side to it, is, remember, it's compassion and love. It's bei jihi. So that the struggles that we go through when we do this path, particularly in the beginning, and got to be honest, the beginning's about the first 20 years, particularly in the beginning, particularly in the beginning of the beginning, which is maybe the first 5 years, we are very, very typically, we humans who take on this path are very uncomfortable while we're doing the practice. We do everything we can to show you how to have fun and so forth, but there's the achiness in the body, there's the scatteredness in the mind, there's all sorts of emotions, confusions, sleepiness. And within the context of North American vipassana practice, of course, you can take a break anytime you want, but within the Asian sort of traditional training and whatever, if you're in a monastery, there are no breaks. It's merciless. And it can be pretty damn hellacious during those initial years of training. So you might say, well, gee, that's sort of like really bad, but the effect of that is to impart within a person an unforgettable lesson in the nature of human misery. I know you wonder, like, why do I have to face all this shit when I sit here? My personal shit. Well, part of it is that later on down the line, when to a certain extent that's gotten worked through, you will never forget how miserable you were, and you'll realize that most human beings live in that kind of misery. And you will have a sense of compassion for them because of what you had to go through. So that's one of the uses. You don't realize it at the time. At the time, it's just like, you know, why does this have to be so hard, and why am I so miserable, et cetera, et cetera. But then you look back and you realize, oh, I was learning a lesson that's going to stay with me for my entire life. I really know what it means to be miserable. I can tell you, in the monastery in Japan, I definitely knew what it meant to be miserable 24/7. And it was relative to Japanese standards, by no means the most rigorous kind of environment. Now, the most rigorous training environment in Japan is Myoshinji, Zen temple. It's called Oni Sodo, Oni Zendo. Sodo and Zendo, they mean the same thing. Oni Zendo. Oni in Japanese means demon. Demon meditation hall. The expression is, for the first 3 years, the novice never shows the white of their teeth, meaning they never smile once in the first 3 years of the training. It's just abject misery. Kurushimi no renzoku in Japanese, it means like an unending sequence of miseries. But as the result of that, it produces people like Sasaki Roshi, my teacher Sasaki Roshi. That's where he trained. 10 years at least, I'm thinking, at Myoshinji. And now, 104, the activity of compassion does not stop. There's no retiring, there's no vacations. It's like all service all the time to anyone who wants to do the practice. Where does that kind of vitality come from? Where does that endless patience come from? From those horrific early years where, you know, he will never forget the misery of the average human being, however transcendent he becomes, and he'll care. So it's compassion and it's love. So one thing is, well, as you work through your poison and pain, the natural love is just there. Another is that in the process of working through your own poison and pain, you have to face your poison and pain. And that gives you this sense of compassion for the human condition. That's the gold standard of spirituality is love of the human condition. It's beyond love of humanity. I mean, you can love humanity, but you have to love the human condition, which is really screwed up. So that's another source. Then there's merging. There's I, thou. There's the experience of other as yourself. And that comes in two flavors, relative and absolute. Most of you are familiar with the focus out technique, where you anchor yourself in the physical senses, sight, sound, and so forth. That causes a relative merging of inside and outside, so you experience other as yourself. Quite literally, not as a concept, but as an actual sensory event, because it's all about expansion and contraction. And so if the touch, sight, sound of another expands, and you allow the image, talk, and emotional body of your subjective world to contract, then you experience other as self. And if you have many, many, many experiences like that, well, that leads to an I-thou relationship with other, and as opposed to an I-it, or worse still, an us versus them relationship. So that merging that comes about by focusing out, that's a relative oneness. And so that with which you are one, you naturally feel some love for. Then there's the absolute merging, which is to share zero. Not only does the subject disappear, the object disappears, and you and the other abide in the source. The dimensionless point before the Big Bang of each moment of self and world. Each mind moment is a sort of little version of the Big Bang, a little Big Bang, like little Big Man or something. So we have these little Big Bangs. And before each little Big Bang, quote before, there is the one, the singular, the singularity, the zero. And so having those absolute mergings experiences with people, you come to a sense that we all sort of have our feet placed, whether we know it or not. We're all have our feet placed on the same groundless ground. And so that gives you another reason for viewing others as brother and sister. You share the womb, the formless womb. That's what brother and sister in Greek, adelphos, it means delphos. A means share, and delphos is womb. So that which you share the womb, the formless womb, the same source. Naturally, there's a sense of love and concern. So those are, I can think of within the theoretical and practice framework that I give you, that would be 4 places where that the love comes in. So